Pleasure to recognize the gentlewoman from Indiana, Ms. Brooks. 5 minutes for her questions.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Dr. Bright, with all due respect, the Vice President was named the head of the Coronavirus White House Task Force, which was actually a recommendation from a bipartisan blue ribbon study panel that issued recommendations years ago and thought the office of the Vice President ought to be in charge of the response. And so, with all due respect, I believe there is that coordination. And part of what I'm very, very concerned relative to this hearing is that there's the impression being made that there's been no plan. And in fact, that's part of what the reauthorization of PAPA that I worked closely with you, Dr. Kadlik, that Congresswoman Eshoo, Dr. Burgess, so many of us relied on you all to share with us what we needed to do to reauthorize PAPA, which most members of Congress really didn't know what that was, Pandemic All Hazard Preparedness Act. Most members of Congress and most members of the American public didn't know we had strategic national stockpiles and that we might actually be short some of these things until this all hit. But we did get that reauthorized, and it was signed into law in June of 19. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And Dr. Bright, you joined BARDA to lead the Influenza Division 2010 right after H1N1 because of your expertise, and we rely on your expertise, and you became director in 2016. After, and you mentioned it in 2007, but after the 2009 H1N1 pandemic, the supply of masks in the Strategic National Stockpile was not resupplied. You've mentioned that actually we've had a problem since 2007. So, but I have to share with you, members like Congresswoman Eshoo and I who've had discussions about this, many of us really didn't know that. We, as members of this committee, did not know and were not told of these shortages of masks as we worked through reauthorization of this important law. Were you aware of this issue, and did you push HHS to maintain mask production for purposes of replenishing the Strategic National Stockpile before this happened in January?
Before 2017, we actually held an annual review of the Strategic National Stockpile that was chaired by Dr. Laurie at the previous ASPR. Since we removed the Strategic National Stockpile from the CDC management under the ASPR management, we have not yet had an interagency cross-departmental review of the supplies in that Strategic National Stockpile. We went through an annual prioritization process. There's always been limited funding and never enough to completely top off the stockpile.
Did you know Greg Burrell?
I do.
He retired.
Yes.
Prior to all of this happening. He led the Strategic National Stockpile.
Yes.
Did you have conversations with Greg Burrell from 2009 until 2020 about what was in the Strategic National Stockpile?
Absolutely. The flu risk management meeting met on a monthly basis, and each year they reviewed and prioritized items that should be purchased by the Strategic National Stockpile.
Okay.
That body, which I actually directed for some time, made recommendations and prioritizations to the Strategic National Stockpile. However, it was the Strategic National Stockpile's responsibility to make those purchases.
And how about FEMC? Does BARDA participate in FEMC? And would you please very, very briefly, because my time is limited, explain what FEMC is? This is a plan that experts like yourselves participate in. So I want the American people to know there have been plans. There have been plans that FEMC had forth a 2017-18 implementation plan. The White House put forth in September of 2018 a National Biodefense Plan. Did you participate in that National Biodefense Plan?
I did, and many of us did.
And it was the first time that our country had actually put forth a National Biodefense Plan. Many said it was kind of landmark, and same thing with FEMC, putting forth many plans. So I want the American people to know a lot of folks over a long period of time have been focused, but yet we did not still have enough. We didn't have enough swabs, we didn't have enough masks, we don't have enough gowns for all of those incredible healthcare providers. So I don't want everyone to be given the impression that you raised the flag just in January, okay, when you saw it was short, because you hadn't gotten the job done prior to January, and you were at those tables, as were so many others. This happened over a very, very long period of time. And those of us have been very disappointed to learn what was and was not in the Strategic National Stockpile. I thank you for your service. I thank you for your expertise. But across the board, over many administrations, we did not do enough. And I yield back.
Do you want to respond, Doctor?
I could say that those plans have been in place, and it's disappointing they were not pulled out in January of this year and followed. They were not put on the table with a strong leader indicating these are our plans, everyone fall in line and follow through with this plan. I think it's important to emphasize the FEMC is the Public Health Emergency Medical Countermeasure Enterprise, which is comprised of many great scientists from across our government to put these plans in place. But since 2017, we have largely dismantled that FEMC organization. We have not had those interagency discussions for a number of years. The Executive Enterprise Committee and Executive Leadership Committee, we may have had 1 or 2 meetings at most in a new restructured or reorganized FEMC organization. So the partners and colleagues across government haven't had those venues to even talk or coordinate for a number of years to understand what that plan looked like and how they would work together to implement that plan when the day came to need it.
Okay, the gentlewoman's time has expired and she's yielded back. Pleasure to recognize